Good day, shipmates. Today we will embark on a candid assessment of Francis P. Matthews, the 50th Secretary of the Navy and the first modern Secretary of the Navy, who served from May 25th, 1949 to July 31st, 1951 under President Truman. We are ranking him as one of the worst of the worst. His tenure, now viewed through the lens of history, paints a picture not of a revolutionary leader, but of one caught between the waning tides of the Second World War and the dawning shadow of the Cold War. Our focus today will be on his ability to recruit, train, equip, and efficiently manage and budget the Navy while staying aligned with the strategic vision of the President and the Secretary of the Navy. Those are the 5 metrics for which we will measure all modern Secretaries of the Navy. To understand why, take a look at video 1 of this series. Category 1, recruit. Score, 3 out of 10. Matthews was burdened with the monumental task of managing the Navy as it emerged from the most destructive war in human history. As the nation turned its attention to peacetime, the Navy faced a reduction in force unlike any seen before. Recruitment efforts were greatly hampered by this World War II drawdown, and Matthews struggled to recalibrate the Navy's personnel strategies to meet the demands of a peace that was not yet certain. Matthews failed to address the crucial need for an efficient recruitment strategy during this difficult transition. With veterans leaving in droves, their replacements, often untested, did not come in sufficient numbers or with the right motivations. By not adapting to the shifting sands of military necessity, Matthews did not leave a lasting impact on Navy recruitment, contributing little to shaping the force for the long-term security challenges that would follow. Score, 3 out of 10. The next category is training. The immediate post-World War II era presented a challenge of extraordinary complexity. Matthews inherited a Navy that was in the process of dramatically downsizing. Having been built up for conflict, the fleet now had to be reduced and the personnel who remained had to be retained for peacetime operations. Yet Matthews struggled yet again with maintaining a balance between demobilization and readiness. The veterans who stayed in were offered little in terms of retraining, and morale plunged as sailors found themselves adrift in a sea of uncertainty. With few opportunities for advancement or professional development, the Navy stagnated in a period where modern training pipelines were critical. Matthews failed to invigorate the Navy's personnel or address the morale crisis. Mental health and reintegration were not handled with the urgency they required, and as a result, readiness took a significant hit. The Navy was not prepared to face the challenges that would come with the Cold War, and the sailors who remained were unprepared to carry the weight of a new geopolitical reality. Therefore, in Category 2, training, score 2 out of 10. Category 3, equip. In matters of equipment and modernization, Matthews was similarly ineffective. Inheriting a post-war Navy still brimming with outdated ships and technologies, Matthews did little to innovate or modernize. The shipbuilding efforts under his leadership were sluggish, and as the Soviet Union began advancing their technological capabilities, the Navy lagged behind. While he had an obligation to push forward with modernization of the fleet, Matthews failed to sufficiently invest in emerging technologies that would have strengthened America's naval power. The pace of ship construction remained inadequate, and there was a general lack of focus on the coming Cold War competition. The United States Navy needed a leader who could steer it through the challenges of a new era. But Matthews' tenure saw a Navy that failed to keep pace with the technological arms race of the 1950s. Category 3, equip. He had to receive a score of 3 out of 10. Next category, alignment to policies. Though his tenure was short and his action constrained by the broader geopolitical developments that were unfolding, Matthews did play a role in the formative years of the Cold War. He was involved in shaping early defense policy and preparing for the Soviet expansion, even though the full strategic framework and containment was not yet fully developed during this time. Matthews' alignment with the President's and the Secretary of Defense's strategic vision was marked by an attempt to assert the Navy's importance in the early years of the Cold War. He took steps to bolster the Navy's nuclear capabilities, but the execution of these initiatives were limited by the transitional nature of the period. His impact, while significant in the larger context, was not the breakthrough leadership required in an era that demanded innovative thinking and bold action. His alignment with national defense priorities was notable, but his execution was too constrained and too bound by the legacy of a Navy at peace. So his overall score for alignment to policies is a 7 out of 10. Category 5, budget/efficiency. Matthews faced fiscal constraints that many would argue he mismanaged. The post-war reduction in military spending was a fact of life, but the Navy's budget was a constant point of contention. The reduction of the aviation budget in favor of the Air Force, along with other fiscal misalignments, made it apparent that Matthews was unable to prioritize spending on naval needs. Procurement programs were often poorly aligned with the Navy's actual strategic requirements, and this mismanagement had long-term consequences for military readiness. The inefficiencies in budgeting and procurement created a burden for future naval operations, as the Navy was forced to operate with inadequate resources to meet its needs. The failure to appropriately balance fiscal constraints with strategic priorities led to a period of financial inefficiency that hampered the Navy's ability to modernize and maintain readiness. So the score for budget/efficiency be a 4 out of 10. Conclusions. In the final analysis, Francis P. Matthews' tenure as Secretary of the Navy was marked by a series of missteps that hindered the Navy's ability to transform effectively from wartime to peacetime. Recruitment, training, and modernization faltered under his leadership, and while he aligned with broader defense policies, his execution was lacking. His inability to properly manage budgets and resources, combined with a failure to adapt to the changing strategic environment, contributed to a legacy that is viewed with considerable disappointment. In ranking of modern secretaries of the Navy, Matthews finds himself at the bottom, not due to a lack of effort, but because of a fundamental failure to steer the Navy in the right direction at a critical juncture in history. His period in office is a reminder that leadership, especially in times of transition, requires more than mere alignment with policy. It requires foresight, action, and an unrelenting drive to modernize and adapt. For that, Matthews must be remembered as one of the least effective leaders the Navy has seen in the modern era. Overall score, 19 out of 50. Thank you, shipmates. Have a fine Navy day.